All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. I want to say a special thank you to Jimmie James for being with us today. Jimmie James is a legend in many ways. We'll get into that here in a second, but he is releasing a book, and Jimmie, it comes out June 11th, correct? Is that right?
June 11th, that's correct.
June 11th, and it's called Playing from the Rough, a personal journey through America's 100 greatest golf courses. So if you're not a golfer, hold on, stick with us. There's a lot. We're not going to be talking about golf too much here, but there are definitely some similarities through what we'll be talking about. So Jimmie, I want to say thank you for jumping on this call. We had a chance to talk about 4 years ago now, I think, which is hard to believe, and being able, or 5 years ago almost, and being able to do that again now is great. So Jimmie, thank you. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and a little bit about your background and what you accomplished recently.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to share my story, John. It's great catching up with you again. My story actually started not far from you, at least a lot closer to where you are now than where I am, in East Texas. Born into poverty, and what was then still the late Jim Crow era, to a single mother who at the time had three other kids, eventually would have eight kids, all of us actually uh, born out of wedlock. And I was the first to graduate from high school, first to go to college and graduate from college. And I started an engineering career, went to an HBCU in Texas, Prairie View A&M University, graduated with a civil engineering degree, and went to work for Exxon at the time. We later merged with Mobil and became ExxonMobil. And 33 years after starting as an engineer, I retired as an executive and then went on a 1 year odyssey to play America's 100 greatest golf courses in that single year, a feat never attempted by anyone else before. And it was just an amazing journey that required a lot of grit and determination on my part, and kindness and generosity on the part of a lot of others.
Well, that is a great way to summarize so much of what happened in the book. And I will go ahead and say, I have never said this about a book I've read before. But when I finished, I texted Jimmie right after I finished it, and I was reading it next to my wife, Brooke, and I looked over and I said, I'm so sad that this is over. I was like sad that this book had ended because I wanted to keep it was so good. And so anyone who wants to be motivated, this is a book for you. And so to dive into that a little more, you briefly mentioned your upbringing, growing up in East Texas during a time when there was a huge racial divide still in poverty, and you go into a lot of details about that in the book. So at that time, you mentioned in your book that you had never even really met anyone that had graduated from high school. Is that correct?
So at 5 years old, we lived in what was called the sawmill quarters. There was a bachelor's mill, and it had housing for the workers. And it was really sort of an indentured servitude thing in a sense, because the business model was they had a company store at the top of the hill, and the workers would spend money in the store, and by the time they got their paycheck, between the housing that was provided and purchasing things at the store, there was really no money coming to the workers. It was really a trade of a house and goods from the store, and that was the environment that I grew up in. And it was in the Sawmill Quarters was an interesting sort of Jim Crow era feature. And at the top of the hill where the store was, the company store, and the actual mill, were the whites lived there. And they lived in homes that were painted, had sheet rocked walls, and electricity and plumbing. Slide down the hill, there was one street that had residences for the Mexicans. They were Mexicans that Birchler had, the owner of the mill, had brought with him from his business he had near Houston. He brought them to Huntsville. They'd come in from Mexico, immigrated from Mexico. And there was one street where the Mexicans lived, and their houses were shacks, but they had natural gas going into the shacks. No plumbing or electricity, but natural gas for heating and cooking. Then you get down to the bottom of the hill, what was called the bottoms, and that's where all the black workers lived. And those homes were shacks, tin roof shacks with no plumbing, no electricity, nor natural gas. We got our light from a kerosene lamp. Actually, it was coal oil made from coal, and the heat came from a makeshift wooden heater, like a drum, a barrel, a drum on its side, and the hole cut in. You put wood in, the stack comes off the drum to vent the smoke. And one night when I was 5, sitting by that wood heater with light, the only illumination being light from that kerosene lamp, I set a goal for myself. I said I wanted to graduate from high school. And at that time, I didn't know anyone who'd graduated from high school. But I knew that if I wanted something different, and I'm not sure how at 5 I fully understood that, but I clearly understood at 5 that if I wanted something different, I had to do something different. And the easiest thing to understand that could be different was to graduate from high school, because there was no one else I knew who had done that. So if I figured that would be a good start on creating something different for myself by doing something different that I didn't know anyone else had done. So I set a goal. I committed to graduating from high school.
Wow. And so one thing we say with the organization I represent, Leadership Management International, we say if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. And so what you're saying is a much more eloquent way of saying that as well. And so I think it's fair to say that when you were sitting by that lamp, that was a dream, right? That had come into your head, right? This dream. But then you had to turn that into a goal. And we talk about that, this thing, this idea, this dream that starts in your head, and you get you excited and you're motivated. But all of us have so many dreams that don't come to fruition. So we have this thing, I'm going to write this, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to start this business or whatever. And then we never do anything about it. So how did you translate that dream in your head into a goal? And then what do you think is true about you that you also turned this dream of playing America's top 100 golf courses into a goal that, I mean, multiple times in your book, there were so many times when you shouldn't have achieved that goal. I mean, it was coming down to just a few days left and there you still were missing invites to places, and but never once did you say, it's not going to happen. You said, I'm going to make it happen. I've got to figure out what I will do to make it happen. So how did you persevere through that and turn those dreams into goals throughout your life?
I'll say a couple of things in that regard. One is often we see people of great achievement and we think about their great skills, their great talents. But when I look at myself and my capability, um, I don't have any of those great talents that you will see some other successful people have. Um, I'm an average athlete, so athletics wouldn't have been a path out for me. I can't sing. I can't even dance. I don't play a musical instrument. The one gift I have is a gift that really was forged from a life where even the simplest things were extremely hard. And so that gift is I don't quit. It's perseverance. And so for me, having a dream or an idea is the beginning, it's the start. And then I think through the process of how do I make that dream come true? What is required? And it doesn't matter that it may be hard. Doesn't matter that it's going to take patience, effort, but I put together a plan and I start to execute that plan. And so for me, it's a process of a dream as in a perceived idea, not a dream as in something that's not capable of being achieved. Then figure out the pathways and understanding there will always be obstacles and figure out how to overcome those obstacles. You know, the book you mentioned earlier, the title of the book is Playing from the Rough. And the concept of that in golf, it's a lot easier to make birdies and pars from the fairway, a little bit more challenging to make them when you hit your drive into the rough. In life, born into the fairway, it's easier to succeed, but it's not impossible to succeed if you're born in the rough. You may have less margin of error. You may have to work harder, but there are pathways that you can find that still get you to the goals that you set for yourself. And so that's my process. Think of an idea, figure out what it requires, and put together a plan, execute that plan, modify that plan because things will change. The plan gives you a reference point and a basis. But if the plan falls apart, build a new one. Never
I
quit.
love that. I love it. No, that's so helpful. And that takes me back to another point you made at the kind of the beginning of your book. You talk about referencing a book written about some different areas who had gone through struggles as well. And it talks about being upfront and real about your struggles, but also not bragging or whimpering about them. So how do you balance that? Because everyone watching this, we all have different levels of struggles and challenges we've been through and those kinds of things. But the fact is, everyone has been through something. So when reading your book, it's, oh my gosh, I mean, so many pages, I would look at Brooke and say, how in the world? I mean, this is so sad. And then I would look at my two boys in their beds, and I would just be so grateful for that they have those. And we just take for granted so many things. But I've still been through struggles, and I can find myself with no perspective complaining or whimpering about my situation, even though I have such a blessed situation. We all do that. So how do you balance being real and upfront with your struggles that you've had in the past and how where you were born and different things have come up along the way, but also saying, but that's not an excuse. Like, how have you balanced that? Because I think that's really hard to do.
So first of all, you were referring to was the quotes I used from Frank McCourt's book, Angela's Ashes, where he
Yes.
talks about the Irish version of struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, I'm not going to complain or whimper. I'll describe the struggles just to give a basis and reference for what had to be overcome. But consistent with what you just said, you know, every person, every one of us has struggles. And to each of us, our own struggle is daunting. It doesn't matter how it compares to someone else's struggle, because to the person going through it, it is daunting. Whether it's somebody else's struggles are daunting to you or to me is irrelevant. It's daunting to them. And so for me, the strength, the fortitude to overcome those struggles and never quit really begins with a mother who I saw never complain, never speak ill of others, who just dealt with life as it was, who recognized the challenges of life, didn't ignore them, but dealt with them. It's in the term in golf would be playing the ball as it lies. Um, my mother didn't play golf, but in the book I write, if she had, she'd never ask for a mulligan. She would just play the ball as it lies. That means deal with the things as they exist and overcome them. That struggles are things that we cannot allow to define us or prevent us from achieving our goals. They're just simply the things that we have to deal with in order to achieve our goals. So in the book, in Playing from the Rough, I talk about a lot of struggles. And I talk about them to help the reader understand that these are just the things I had to deal with in order to achieve what I wanted to achieve. They're not excuses. They're not complaints. They're just the things I have to deal with. And for each person, their struggles are going to be different, but they're going to be struggles nonetheless. And as I said earlier, to them, they're going to be daunting. So I looked and I learned from my mother, it was just simple things. Like if something was broken, she didn't lament about it. She just figured out another way. And that's what we have to do in life, is just figure out another way. And this is near the end of the book. I'm at the 99th course, and I'm playing with Dominic Chu, who's the market reporter for CNBC, and his wife, and a friend, Kenny. And my wife Erica comes and joins us to walk the last 9 holes. And Megan, Dominic Chu's wife, she hits a ball, and she explains to Erica that that's a good shot. And she said, my criteria for a good shot is pretty simple. If I can find the ball and it's closer to the hole than it was before I hit it, it's a good shot. Yeah. And that's life. You know, the challenges could be big, they could seem insurmountable. But if we can chip away at those challenges every day and just get a little closer to that goal than we were before the day started, it's been a successful day. And so that's the approach I take.
That's fantastic. And that perfectly goes into my next question that I had, which is a quote that I pulled out of the book that just really stood out to me. And is you wrote in the book that who we become, what we achieve, and what we contribute is determined by whether we quit when our biggest challenges threaten to derail our biggest dreams or find a way to forge on. And I chose to never quit. So you said that was your best characteristic. So what would you say to the person watching this who right now, you know, maybe they had these huge sales projections, right? And in the grand scheme of things, it's not the biggest problem, but to them, it's a huge problem. It's real. That's a big thing. And they're not hitting their goals right now. Or they had a big fitness goal for the year and they're way behind on it, or family things, or health, or whatever it could be. And they just feel like they want to give up, throw in the towel and say, I'm done. I tried. I can't do it anymore. And they want to quit. What would you say to that person?
I'd say it's hard. And the things that are worth achieving are hard, but we have to break them down into manageable pieces. So I'd say my advice to that person would be, what are some of the things that are making it even more challenging for you to reach your goals? Pick just one of those things and attack that one thing. Set a goal to address that one thing, and then address the next one, and the next one. But reduce the problem to something that's not overwhelming, that can be managed, to just one step along the way.
Yeah, love that. And you also talked about in the book all the times when you would be in the rough or behind a tree or something. You're at Augusta National, right? Like the Masters is played there. It's the best tournament. It's so hard to get on there. And there's so many times you probably want to throw in the towel when you just shot a really bad score. And sometimes you have to pitch the ball out into the fairway to get back on track or something like that. So that's kind of how in golf, right, we would break it down. It's just one shot at a time. I can't control the shot I just hit. I can't control the fact that it looked like it was going to the fairway, it hit a sprinkler head and flew off into the rough. I just have to play it as it lies, like you said, and go from there. So the mission of our organization is to develop leaders and organizations to their full potential. And in the book, you talk about a conversation with your caddy who said, I don't think we should impose our limits on someone else's perception of their potential. And that really stood out to me too, because we do that all the time. We say, well, if I couldn't do that, there's no way you can do that, and those kinds of things. However, you and that caddy agreed that we don't impose our limits on someone else. We should encourage them to reach their full potential, whatever it is. So how can we encourage people to achieve their full potential? And what role did that play in your life on this journey with the people who helped you play 100 courses?
So the story you referred to uh, is one about this caddy that I worked to mentor, Melvin, who was my caddy at my country club in Atlanta. What I employed, though, are the things I learned. I learned from my mother and the way she raised us. Um, when I was 16, we lived in the projects in a town, small town called Hitchcock, Texas, and um, the projects, living in the projects, the social worker would come along every couple of months or so and meet with the kids to make sure they're not being abused or whatever. And one particular meeting, she asked me, what did I want to do in life? And I said, I wanted to be a globe-trotting businessman. I wanted to travel, be a businessman that traveled around the world. And she told me, she said, um, it's nice to dream, but your goals should be realistic. And for you to just graduate from high school and get a job at one of the plants working around here, you would have beat the odds. So you should focus on something like that, not this big dream that you have. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the jobs at those local facilities. There were a lot of people who built great lives and bought homes and educated their kids, and those are great jobs to have. But I had a bigger dream, and she was telling me to dream smaller. And so with that moment with my caddy Melvin, he had some really big dreams. And to me, they may have seemed like they could have been out of reach, but it's not my job to tell someone else what they're capable of achieving or putting my own limitations on the things that they could achieve. And so I think for all of us, we have to set our goals. We'll recognize that we will encounter barriers and then figure out ways to overcome those barriers. And as you were saying, Jonas, sometimes on the golf course, you hit a bad shot, you take your medicine and just pitch out. Other times, there's an opportunity. One of the rounds I played in Oregon at Bend Dunes, I was I was behind a tree, behind trees, hit a really bad drive, big wide fairway, missed the fairway. I'm behind trees. My caddy says, chip out, which is take your medicine, best thing to do. Always good advice. But I noticed this small opening in the trees, about the size of a strike zone. and and I'm an engineer. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, that's about at the angle of the launch angle for a pitching wedge. And the distance of the hole is also the same. So if I can get that ball through that hole, it has no choice but to land on the green 120 yards away. And so I go for it. I focus, I come up with a plan, I focus, and I execute. And it works. And the cat is just standing there stunned. But there are times you have to know when to play it safe, when to take your medicine and play it safe, and other times when to go big and go for the opportunity. And we should never, I don't believe we should ever put limitations on what other people believe they can do. And so that that social worker was trying to put a limitation on what she believed I could do. And it was well-meaning. She was well-meaning, and well-intended. But still, I think we should dream big and figure out a way to achieve those big dreams.
Absolutely. Well, and also what I love about the example you give about the golf shot you hit is that once you decided, there was no going back. It's like, okay, well, now I'm all in. I'm hitting this shot. So this is what I'm doing. While you're hitting that shot, if you're going to execute it, you can't be thinking, that's a pretty small window. Or maybe I should chip it out. And I've had those swing thoughts before. I take it back and I get to the top and say, this is a bad idea. And then I hit a terrible shot. But the times I've committed, this is what I'm going to do. I'm hitting this shot. I'm going with this decision. That's when you can pull it off. And not every time, but even if you don't pull it off, you can be confident that, hey, I gave it my best. I tried. Now let's figure out what to do next. And you go from there. So love that example. Yeah. So another thing you mentioned in your book, and this first sentence may kind of take us aback a little bit, is there's nothing magical about believing. And we say, whoa, 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 like Disney. It's like, yes, there is. Wish upon a star, believe and all believe and achieve and shoot for the stars. And, we are taught to dream big. And you even just said dream big. But I love what you said after that. There's nothing magical about believing, but it simply motivates you to put in the effort to make happen what you believe is possible.
Right.
So what would you say to those who just struggle with believing, where they're at, they don't believe they can make it out, they think they're stuck, how it is how it is. Maybe they're in a country or a region, they've just seeing problem after problem after problem. They think they're never going to get out, or a family or a business where everything looks bad. That's the first group. The second group, what about those who believe? They say they believe, and I'm going to do this, but they're not putting in the required efforts to make that belief happen. So one, to those who don't believe they can do it, and two, to those who say they believe they can do it, but they're not putting in the effort to make it happen.
So on the first, when I say there's nothing really magical about believing, there really isn't. There are very few things that are great achievements. Very few things that are extremely hard to do that will not end up with you facing some obstacle, some significant obstacle, some type of adversity that will make you want to quit. We are designed as beings to survive both physically and emotionally and spiritually. So if we don't believe that we can do something and we face a tremendous obstacle, to protect ourselves emotionally and spiritually, we stop. And we use some reason and rationale for doing that. And we're doing that because we're trying to protect our sense of worth and protect ourselves from failure. So sometimes we don't even try because of that. What the believing does is when you face those obstacles, you believe the sacrifice, the effort that you have to make in order to overcome that obstacle is worth it. If you don't believe it's worth it, it makes no sense for you to go on.
Yeah.
But if you believe that it's worth it, that because you're capable of it and it's worth it, then you're going to find a way to overcome that obstacle. And I thinking about it, I think it answers both of your.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think it answers both of your questions, because basically, if you quit, if you give up, we have to be honest with ourselves, and it's usually we're giving up because we don't believe we can actually do it, or we don't believe that what it takes for us to do it is worth it. So that's not believing in that goal that we've set for ourselves.
Yeah. And as you were answering that, I was thinking, I think this applies to both groups. It
Yeah,
totally does. And I love what you said. We have to stop playing games with ourselves. If we're not going to do what it takes, it is perfectly fine to say, hey, actually, this isn't for me. But
right,
just say it. Just say it.
right.
Stop and move to the next thing. There may be something else that's aligns with your giftings more that you can do, that motivates you, that's exciting for you, that you can believe in. And so belief usually translates into enthusiasm. And I think if there's no one who had to sell their enthusiasm more than you when you were trying to talk to all these people about playing at all these different places and getting invites to things, and people are having to uproot their schedule sometimes, and you were not blatantly asking them to do these things. You made it very clear that I'm not going to put anyone out, but I'm just going to share my belief, my enthusiasm, and my dream and my goal, and I'm going to trust that people will latch onto that. So you had such an unyielding belief that developed so much enthusiasm that people locked in. So can you explain more about how you sold your enthusiasm and your dream to people?
Yeah, again, going back to my mother, I would say that my mother taught us to believe in others, to see the good in everybody we meet. And I fundamentally believe that at our core, every single one of us is good. That our Creator created us in His image, in an image of good. So I think our basic instincts are actually to be good. And so tapping into that with other people, expecting that from other people. I think when you expect it, you never demand this from others, but you conduct yourself in a way in your interactions with others that brings that out in others. So it's just infectious. When we all meet people, doesn't matter who they that are excited about something, that they get us excited about it. And we want to be a part of it. And that's sort of the magic that's the magic I was depending on. I think we live in a great country. I think that one of the other things I say in the book is part of my travel across the country, and I don't think this is unique to our country, but my travel, because I think it's a human element and human experience. But traveling across the country, it's do we still have that grit, that determination, that belief in others that's strong enough, that makes us enthusiastic enough to help others achieve their dream? And I believed that that would occur. So when I talked with people and expressed enthusiasm and first of all, the thing that I learned most, I think, too, from my mother is my mother was never not herself. She was authentic. She was, I mean, I talk in a book about this time I took her to New York, and we were at the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, obviously way before 9/11. And my mother was walking through the World Trade Center with pink, fluffy house slippers. And so there's this genuine, this authentic you. And it's, I think, one of the things I say about interacting with people is that how someone feels about us is determined by by what they feel about themselves after interacting with us. And if people feel really good about themselves after interacting with us, they're generally going to have a positive view of us. If people feel rotten after interacting with us, they're less likely to have a positive view of who we are. And so it really costs nothing, I don't think, to to bring out the best in others, to bring out the best in ourselves, and in doing so, bring out the best in others. And that again is just grounded in what I saw with my mother.
Yeah. Well, and it goes into a story you told about someone named Sergio that you were golfing with, who had helped you on your journey of playing these 100 courses. And again, to anyone who's not familiar with golf, who's still watching this, we're not just talking about you drive up and you pay a greens fee and you go play this course. I mean, you are having to go through a lot of conversations, a lot of invitations to get onto some of these places, places that the top golfers in the world only dream of playing. You played 100 of them in 365 days, right? And so Sergio had to help you get on to this place. And you and Sergio were conversing back and forth. And Sergio said that helping a stranger was as much a gift to him as it was to me being you, Jimmy. And that really stood out with me because it takes me back to Steve Jobs' quote where he says, I've come to find that no one has ever turned me down when I simply asked for help. And this inherent need that people love to help other people. And
Right.
so is that something, going back to what you were just sharing, that you believe to be cross-cultural, no matter where you're from, that when you ask for help, a lot of times we ask for things, but I think we ask from it in a prideful way where we're not willing to admit that we need help. In your situation, for this journey, you needed help from people. People had to help you achieve this.
It could
So if we
not be
haven't,
done without them.
yeah. And so a lot of our biggest goals and biggest dreams, we have to put our hands up sometimes and say, hey, I can't do this by myself. I need help. And people will latch onto that and say, I can help. And they'll jump in. Is that what you found to be true across your journey?
I'll take it. I will take it even a step further. Sometimes the asking for help isn't the verbal asking for help. It's just being vulnerable.
Mm.
And I think for me, it was people saw an opportunity to help because I was willing to reveal the need for help. And that's the vulnerability. It's being able to reveal the need for help. You don't even have to go so far as to ask, just having the willingness to show that vulnerability and exposing the need for it. And people will latch on to that
Wow.
because, again, at our core, we're good, we're helpful, and we have grit. And we'll use that grit not only for ourselves, but in pursuit of other people's dreams, of helping others achieve their their dream. You know, I mentioned that willingness to be vulnerable, uh, which was for a long time hard for me because of the circumstances that I grew up in and just the lack of feeling valuable myself, the lack of self-worth, the feeling of being invisible, those things. But with my wife, that's where I learned truly that um, love flourishes in the garden of vulnerability.
Mm.
Being willing to not hide your frailties, your flaws, your faults. We all have them. And trusting in the humanity of people. And that's really what Sergio Galvez was really referring to, is that when we allow others to help us, allowing them to help us is as much as a gift to them as their help is a gift to us.
Yeah. And we're stripping them the ability to be able to help by not being vulnerable.
By
I think
not
that's
being,
something I
yeah.
realized. My wife and I, we really tried when we had our first child. We're like, no, we got it. We got it. But the second we started saying, hey, we didn't sleep last night. Can someone please come over for an hour and help us? And the amount of people, yes, what else can we do? And they would just start showing up with meals. And that was just having a baby. You know, so many people do that. But we thought, well, everyone else is getting through this. We have to pretend like we can get through without anyone else too. But that's just not true. The second we opened up, that we were struggling, we were having a hard time some nights, and the next day and those things, people just jumped in ready to go. So I think when it applies to our goals and our dreams, when we share, when we're not afraid to share these big goals that we have, and then say, hey, I'm trying to hit this goal, and I've kind of come to a place where I need some help. And like you said, you don't even need to ask, but you just make others aware of where you're at and be vulnerable in the wins and the losses as you go. It can be very helpful. So go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it takes a tremendous amount of strength to be vulnerable. And that strength is because it takes a tremendous amount of trust to be vulnerable, and the ability to fundamentally trust other people and trust that other people at their core are good.
Yeah, that's great. So I've got one more question for you. This has been amazing. Thank you so much. And last one, it's just a real softball answer for you. It's like a 6-inch tap in for Eagle. It's that easy. What is your final word of advice for us goal setters? We're all about setting goals, developing a plan, those kinds of things. What is your final word of advice that you would want to leave with us as we set goals and look to achieve them?
There is a brick that was placed at the Civil Rights Museum in Tennessee, in Memphis, at the Lorraine Hotel where Dr. King was assassinated. That is a part of my retirement. ExxonMobil put a brick in the courtyard.
Well,
That with my name on it, donated in my name. And the words they inscribed on that brick were, never settle for average. And the advice I would give is dream big, because every single one of us is endowed with some gift. Mine, as I said, is perseverance. I don't quit. Everything worth achieving is hard. Success and failure, and you mentioned it earlier, and I'll just say it in a slightly different way, but success and failure is determined at the intersection of aspirations and adversity. When your biggest dreams and hopes for your life, for your career, for your family, for everything you hold dear, come up against the biggest challenges, the most daunting things you've ever faced, never quit. There is a pathway through it. Have the patience, the determination, the perseverance to find that pathway, and it will eventually emerge.
Well, that was about as good of an answer as I could have hoped for. Jimmie, we'll go ahead and clip that and just put that everywhere. I think we all need to hear that over and over and over again. Never settle for average, never quit, perseverance, persevere. And can you say that one more time, your definition of what you said success? It's the intersection of
that success is determined at the intersection of adversity and aspirations. So it's where your aspirations meet the challenges. And if you have aspirations and you never feel challenged, they're not really aspirations.
Yeah, that's good.
The aspirations are huge goals. Yeah. And anything that's significant is going to be hard. And so be prepared for it, and be prepared to find a way to overcome it. That's what playing from the rough is really all about too, is overcoming adversity, holding on to your belief in your dreams, and overcoming adversity when it comes your way. For all of us, for each and every one of us, it always will. And we have the ability within ourselves to find pathways. It'll be hard. It will be hard, but there are pathways. Hard is not impossible.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, again, we're on with Jimmie James, author of Playing from the Rough, a personal journey through America's 100 greatest golf courses. The book comes out on June 11th of 2024. Pick up a copy, pre-order it. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Legitimately one of the best books I've ever read. Highly recommended for everyone. And Jimmie, I just want to say again a sincere thank you to you for putting the book together, being so vulnerable, and also sharing your amazing successes with all of us as well. Truly inspiring, and for also taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule to allow me to grill you with some questions and learn from your wisdom and your insights. I thank you so much and hope you have an amazing rest of the day. Is there anywhere we can find you online or anything to keep up with the launch of the book or anything like that?
I am on LinkedIn as Jimmie James. I'm on Instagram and X as Top 100 Golf Nomad.
Love, that's a good username. That's a good one. Well, great. Jimmie, thank you again. And to everyone watching this, I hope this was inspirational and motivating to you as well. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.